Wonderful. I am super excited to actually welcome you guys back to this an awesome AI Masters program that we've been developing. It's still under the hood, and the academics across Europe. So in Ireland, in the Netherlands here, in Italy, and our dear friends in Hungary, we are all sort of building up our modules, and at the same time we are ourselves included. So the other company that I run, Real AI, and a few subject matter experts companies, they are also part of the consortium, obviously, giving the world of academia a real hardcore look into what actually is really happening into the real world. So welcome back, guys. I'm super excited to have you guys here in our human-centered AI webinar series, and just to give you a very quick introduction to our dear friend, and also a chief executive officer of Nathean Analytics, or Nathean Technologies, Maurice Lynch. But I was just one little there was a little bit mistake. You saw that in intro, Lynn, but obviously it's Lynch. And Maurice, welcome. I'm super excited to have you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Maurice.
Thank you, Terry. Thanks very much for the introduction. Yes, my name is Maurice Lynch from Nathean Technologies, and we were founded in 2001. So we've always been involved in the wonderful world of data. So we're based in Dublin, Ireland, and we're really delighted to be part of the HCAIM consortium across Europe. So it's a great experience for us. And like your good self, we are part of the industry representatives on the SME side as well. So our day-to-day job is working with customers and clients and partners on extracting data and turning it into meaningful, actionable insights as well, and all of that. And through our work with customers as well, we focus on that whole element of transforming data to let business managers and leaders make better decisions. So I'll just jump into the presentation now, Terry, if you will. So I'm just going to share my screen. So
wonderful. Go ahead, Maurice.
Okay. Please hold.
There you go.
Okay, here we go. Okay, can you see that, Terry?
Yeah, I am on AI maturity model.
Yep. Great. Okay, let me just, sorry. Okay. Okay, so this discussion here today is about quality of data in preparation for AI projects, which it's a big topic, and there's quite a lot to get through here on this. But these are really jumping off points for further research within the sphere of AI. So one of our esteemed technical centres here in Ireland is the Centre for Applied Data Analytics Research. And this is one of their the maturity model that they've promoted on their site. So we work very closely with them, and we're one of the founding industry members of CEDAR. As you can see, within the AI maturity model, they have 5 dimensions here. So A, you set out your strategy and your vision for the data-driven digital transformation, the target applications for the AI, and also you've got the broad sweep of the culture and cooperation within the organization. And on the top right, then you have the actual processes themselves and building out the projects. But what I want to focus on today is one of these strands of this is the IT infrastructure and data access. And it really is the access to, as it says there, the access to quality data is critical enabler for any AI strategy. And it's quite a deep subject in and of itself. And sometimes we can focus very much on algorithms and the outcomes of AI and machine learning as well.
Yeah.
But again, it's about the quality of data going into that as well. And even from our work in academia as well, and working with the colleges, data sets are presented and then the algorithms are applied to that data sets. But really sometimes the focus is, don't assume you're always going to get beautifully cleansed and and perfect data going into the algorithm, and the complexity of these algorithms can be a minefield in itself, and which I'll touch on as well. So really, this talk is just to get us thinking about the various strands of what makes up quality of data, and how would you go about even just getting going on that. You have to get, as they say, to get going and then get good. Okay, so this section here. Terry, can you just confirm you see on a new slide on the screen here?
I'm still on AI maturity, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We just have a slight technical issue here, so I'm just
no worries. No worries. Do you want to unshare? We can restart it again.
Please hold.
I can also do it for you.
Yeah. No, I have it here. Just let me know.
Okay. No worries. No worries.
Okay. Can you see the data screen now, Terry?
Yes, I am on a data screen, 2.5
yes.
million bytes.
Okay, very good.
That's a handful or a mouthful.
Very good. Yeah. So let's. It all begins with the data. So that's a fantastic word there. Quintillion bytes of data. 2.5 to the 9 gigabytes of data every day and increasing. And my question here is: so what? We're now, talking about the atoms in the universe and the neurons in the human brain as well. And does it really matter to you on the so what? If do we really care about LinkedIn's data or YouTube's? The data is generated by YouTube really comes down to your data and the quality of your data, and how you manage and curate that data coming into your systems, and how you manage that from a governance perspective, a provenance perspective, down to the analytics as well. So they're great. They're great for slides. They're great to quote these things, but really we're about applied analytics here, and just to focus on one's own data and one's own sets of problems, really, because ultimately with AI, you're trying to solve a problem. You're trying to solve a problem with data that you come from your environment and elsewhere. So again, stepping right back then to any organization, really, it's how much value you're getting from your data. And this is going right back to the maturity level of the data within the organization as well. And most people are data aware. And we'd see this is quite typical for any organization. Is you're building out reports, you're collecting data, collating it into spreadsheets or databases and growing it out into that level, and that's for standardized reporting. The next level up is to get to data proficiency. So you have a level of standardization across maybe more of it at a departmental level, and you can track your KPIs and metrics using maybe BI platforms or more advanced analytical systems. But you kind of want to keep moving on up towards the next level, which would be where the data-based decisions are. You're using data for critical business decisions. Now you're into the data savvy that you do need to start. The trust in that data needs to be rock solid. You need to move on to the next level where everything is purely data driven. And some organizations will say if there's no data, there's no decisions. And this is removing the infamous gut feeling based on historical behaviors or outcomes as well. So how do you actually get it that it's fully data driven to add scale to the whole organization? If you're building up if you're going to be making serious decisions based on what's coming through the data pipeline, and this is a really key step. And within the whole data world as well, these are classical big data items of volume, velocity, veracity, and variety of the data. I think there's a few more V's in there as well. But in terms of this talk today, it is about veracity and the truth within that data. How trustworthy and how truthful is that data? Big topic in and of itself, obviously. But it's all about the trust in the data that is coming through the data pipeline, and how do you is it provable, but is it trustworthy on that data? And it's really through a feedback loop that the data can actually be more verified. And it takes some work to get to that point. But as we were saying, there are topics within the whole data world to help you become aware of these areas of further research, and there are tools and technologies out there. So data governance then is where, and this is the major topic, and especially for our company, where we really want to start at this point where once you have that data, how do you govern access to it? Because you do need to be very mindful of who is accessing that data. And now there's the whole world of GDPR, PII, and auditing of that data. A lot of companies may well get stuck down in the undisciplined and reactive stage, where in the undisciplined world is where you would have, it's IT driven and probably more historical. It's probably improved more so nowadays, where there's a requirement for data reporting, and that is pulled out of back-end systems, pulled through ERP systems, run reports from IT, and that data or reports are then delivered up. And it can be reactive. The line of business do need information readily available. They're throwing questions at the IT team to pull that information out, and the results do get done, because when somebody demands information, the information will eventually be produced. Again, tipping back into the quality of the data. If data was pulled quickly from various systems, again, how do you check the quality of the data coming through? And it is difficult. It is not a trivial task. Once you're in this world of reactive and undisciplined data gathering, there is an overhead to that. Yes, the information might come relatively quickly, but then you may have key person dependencies on who produced that data. Did they write various scripts, ETL, extract, transform, and load scripts? Are they sitting on on a folder in a server somewhere? And who is managing those? It's quite common. We've all been there. We all do it, but or it's in various spreadsheets and various folders or emailed around. So I think we're all familiar with that world, and that can be fine and well in session based, where you just need this interim data and information that might feed into a more, how would you say, more organized and disciplined approach. So as you go up this maturity curve as well, you're into a more proactive. So once you get the systems in place, now IT and business are working together. So now they can have an enterprise view of both the customer and the product. And now it's one of those, you'll know it when you see it, where data is being trusted and people are collaborating and they're sharing reports through whatever system. And there's no real questioning of the data, and the pain and that thrashing to get information out is diminishing, and you're seeing better quality of results through the system. But the data and business can remain separate, and it's not in the ideal situation. You do want to move to the next level. Now it's where the business requirements are driving the IT side of the business. So you start with the fundamental problem that the organization or business wishes to achieve. They set out the requirements of what data is required to solve that, and it kind of inverts the model, the more historical model. And the process becomes repeatable and automated. And it is moving, as you can see in the bottom section there, is the people, process, and technology answer to that. And you know what this, and people may well be looking at this going, that sounds brilliant, data governance, and do we need a data steward for this part of the governance? Do we have to hire somebody for this? And it can be resourcing issues. You may well not have the resources or skill sets within the organization. So it's finding this balance of pulling and curating data again into well-defined data sets, data lakes, data warehouses as well. So once that data has then been accessed and pushed through AI ML algorithms as well, it's that this has been taught through. Have you done a situation assessment on your data maturity within the organization? Do you have data governance procedures? Do you understand the depth of what's involved in data governance? What is your metadata plan and strategy? How are you organizing yourself that if it comes to an audit that you can trace back into the data and who accessed that data when and so on. And these are all part of the back-end systems to get that data. Which leads us into the next section then is the provenance of data. And this now is getting, again, as we're going through each of these areas of expertise in their own way, is the depths of complexity can widen. And data provenance it's a beautiful title. It sounds fantastic just to know where the actual lineage and provenance of where that data came from, or the entity or that part of information, and who last edited that piece of information, and can you trust the data? Can you understand how it was collected? Who owned that data? Who has rights to that data? Can you trust the data? And also verifying the processes used to obtain the results that complies with requirements and regulations. Our company was involved in a major data migration project many years ago, and there was a post-audit of our processes from one of the major SI companies that were brought in by the firm to audit how we had actually run our control reports on the data to prove that all the accounts and balances were cleanly pushed forward. So that would have been in its time considered an element of provenance, because we had to verify our processes and stand over them and sign off on the processes that to obtain the results, because there was elements of regulatory compliance on that for audit sign off. Or even to the last point of reproducing how something was generated. There was a previous webinar, HCAIM webinar on explainable AI/ML on this, which is geared towards explaining how the algorithms themselves came to a decision, which is phenomenally complex and way beyond how I can talk about this. But certainly look back through the previous webinars here, and you'll have the depth to talk from Cedar, Nosheen, and the guys there. Big topic on explaining how the algorithms work, but equally the algorithms are only as good as the data they've come in to it. So we'll probably see a coalition of explainable data as well as explainable AI as well. The two are quite married. So a very big product. So again, this is just to kind of consolidate that you're moving through a pipeline. You're taking that data from the various sources, and it can be from any source of data, traditional ERP data, weather data, the big data side of data, and more so now from IoTs, from devices as well. It goes through that cleansing and washing and fixing of the data. Then you're into the data set and model management, the governance part of it as well. And areas that we're working in R&D is around the actual management of the models themselves, and even to a degree the provenance of those models as they change, and how do you push models down to IoT devices and back up. So there's this whole back-end administration of both curation of the data, the metadata itself, as it washes through. And we all want to be at the end seeing the fantastic end results and the actionable insights as well. But again, there's just to be very aware of that whole pipeline and that continuous integration of the feedback loop within it. So once you get to this the trust point, and this is key to getting to that level, and that you can stand over that to whatever models you have. Have you performed a situation assessment on the maturity of the data models within your organization, looking at the data governance aspects of that. How are you governing the data? What systems you've in place to trace the governability and the auditability of the data, and the provenance of the data as well. Is it something that you're aware of? Is it something that you've applied some of the technology? I know there's the W3C provenance sort of framework, and there are products around that can help with provenance to track that metadata. Again, each of these are in their own way quite deep topics, and they're resource hungry for both people, processes, and you have to kind of balance out. You grind everything to a halt, making sure the data is absolutely perfect, or have you come to an agreement of what is the good enough point of the data, but you can stand over that data, and just be mindful again that the end users, if they do not trust that data or the results, or they're totally counter to what they're seeing from their older systems, you lose the trust, and it can take quite a while to get into that. And again, from our experience as well, it takes a while just to, some organs, they're just operating at such a fast pace, sometimes they don't have the time to stop and think and put systems into place. And this is where companies like us will step in and help make sense of that framework, and really look to people and say, well, what answers are you looking to, what questions are you looking to have answered as well, and work back to what data you need for that part of the solution. And again, just a very brief case study for ourselves. I'll kind of generalize it to that point of just to show where data in one of our customers has data disparately spread across multiple physical locations, and each of those locations would be relatively low tech, but the data is stored locally. So we need to have agents taking that data locally, aggregating data locally, and then working that way up to a centralized data mart into standardized area that you can then apply both governance and then the analytics on top of that. But each of those sites, there's data flowing through that, so you could apply the maturity of that original site itself. Look at both how do we govern access to that data, is there GDPR aspects to this data, PII data, what is the provenance? Can you trace it back? In this case, you could see where you could trace data back through drilling in at a dashboard level to find out where that data came from, and then investigate each source of that data flowing in through this. And there's quite a complex technology in that place, and so not everything is brilliantly stored in the cloud where everything is fantastically aggregating of access. We're still in a situation where data is physically out in siloed areas as well, and we need to tackle that. So this is actually the final slide here, is to talk about the analytics side then. So once we have all that brilliantly curated data and we trust the data coming through, if you kind of look at it at a super high level, that you have on the left, you have obviously the data, and the actions are going to be taken on the right hand side based on that data. And again, we would have had the descriptive view of what happened. You're looking back in time, and you're just looking see just simple counting of where we're at and where we've come from. But how do you know? And there's a lot of human input in that. The diagnostic side then is why did it happen? Can we now look at the information that we've been provided for this and actually see if there's reasons behind those anomalies or exceptions, and how do we deal with that? So a lot of human interaction on that, and you can apply predictions to the data in that using linear regression, whatever type of forward-looking forecasting you do with standard statistical analysis. And all of these are obviously to come to some form of a decision or no decision. And you can see where now we're moving into the more prescriptive world, where the actual systems themselves can start prescribing what you should do, and where you have AI and ML coming in, where it's now taking decisions out of the human hand, so to speak, to say whether you got that loan, you didn't get that loan. We're back into the explainability of why did somebody get refused for whatever they were applying for, and can you explain the data that came to that decision? Quite a complex area. And you have this decision automation. So you're now, looking from the point of view of, say, automated driving, where the data is coming in absolute real time and actions need to be taken, whether the car brakes or swerves. Now you don't have the human in the loop there. And all of these are built on layers of trusted data. So it's quite an exciting but scary time as well, to say. The deeper we go into this as well, is quality of data to have quality of actions, and everything in between as well is what happens when something goes wrong. Can you trace everything back? Did you have reliable, trustworthy data in the first place, and can you somehow prove that or stand over that data in some form? And equally, the algorithms themselves that rely on that data, how trustworthy are they, and can we explain how they came to that decision? So that's actually the broad sweep. It brings us back into the I might hand back to Terry on this one, just to maybe explain the HCAIM part of it and how this fits into this series of webinars.
Wonderful. I think it definitely probably fits in the heart of an organization. When I heard, what you explained, a lot of folks who are just purely learning engineering or building those cool apps that can extract amazing insights, whether it is video, audio data, all kinds of unstructured data, and all they care about is presenting a wonderful app to the users. Absolutely, perhaps totally oblivious of the structures, the privacy policies, etc. And don't start telling those young kids about metadata and governance and provenance. So I think as much as this topic has reached and is well understood within organizations who have not yet been exposed to these vast quantities of, let's say, unstructured data, which companies like Google, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok use, nurture, and actually, create monetization strategies to do, to sell more services to their customers. So Mike, I'll just kind of jump into questions. Answer to your question is, I think it fits it probably, it should sit in the heart of any organization. When you see those flow charts, reminds me of each time there is a technological revolution, when a data center or an application landscape within large customer environments were disrupted. Be it virtualization, which was a technology super hot 10 years ago. Then you had cloud computing. There was a ton of debate going on what data to keep, what data to put in the cloud. And now I think we are all in this AI world where, if I just put a hat as a data governance officer, I would be nervous as hell. So before I get into my own questions, I would like to ask a few questions. For some weird reason, I'm not able to share, LinkedIn posts directly here. So I'm just copying and pasting them for you. So this is a question or a comment which our colleague Monica has posted. Um, and what do you have a comment on this? If you can read this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't see that. Seem to see that, Terry. Okay, just 1 second.
I can read it out for
Yeah.
you. It's here on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
So what the question is, so there are trusted frameworks are essential to ensure data quality, right? And to ensure that the right data is shared. We just don't want to keep ingesting data of all type of modalities. And such sharing should be carried out in secure and reliable manner, complying with GDPR.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps the question here is, it almost feels like, uh, you know, all these big companies, internet companies, are doing all the fun stuff, but I don't see these conversations. I'm sure conversations are happening inside companies. But how much are they? How robust are the data ingestion, data curation strategies inside enterprises? What is your experience with that, especially with the incumbents of AI?
Yeah, I think it comes back to that situation assessment within the landscape, that you map out the data landscape. Where's that data coming from? And at each point, you can ask those questions more retrospectively, saying, right, okay, if we had to go back into an organization to say, well, how are you curating that data? How is it being managed? So how reliably and is it complying with regulation? It is a very difficult question to ask, because you have to be able to trace that data back to where that data came from at the end result, because there's so many touch points to data as it goes through. Even in the old-fashioned Excel, where it would be emailed to somebody else modifies it, it's emailed to somebody else, and the end result could then be extracted from Excel, scripted into an RDBMS, and then shared out and connected in via API. It's it is chasing that back to that point. So I think it's a difficult one, and usually you'd find with regulations more of the fear of fines from the end result of regulation. It can create risk teams and data access teams, and we can see that with GDPR, the advent of when GDPR came into play, that people were looking to, at a certain level, you have to have a data steward. This has to now
Yeah,
be somebody's job, this day job, if you're over a certain size as well. So I think we'll see that, as it's maturing through the GDPR cycle itself as well, what flows out of that.
perfect. The next question, I think it's a perfect answer. I know, I mean, back in the days, when I say back in the days when data analytics was, becoming a minor revolution, some simple machine learning models were being adopted to predict customer churn. If you're a bank, if you're a private in public banking services, it's very important to kind of know, how is the churn looking like, and what is my customer journey, online, offline, going to the
Mhm.
physical location versus all the services they buy, insurance or what have you, from the banking services. And I saw all these sort of hubs. So there was discussions around, we need to have a data governance strategy. We need to set up this, and all these roles that you just mentioned, data steward, and then you had this guys, there was a machine learning expert explaining from his perspective. And it seemed as if we were building a monolithic sort of a data governance organization inside a company, inside an organization that already is super heavy matrix organization, has branch offices around the country, and probably also has operating companies around the world. So it almost seemed like an impossible task. It literally, I've seen years and years companies have taken to actually set up a data governance strategy, leave alone that it starts operating and functioning as a well-oiled machine. And now with the advent of AI, and people are already saying, hey, don't worry about AI because it's already there. And now you're having decentralized organization where you will start literally kind of having a revolution where, not revolution, or we will have a re-emergence of the decentralized organization when we started off using internet, right? Back when Microsoft and Novell and all these companies were selling software, you could install inside your data rooms, and you had an organization perfectly secure, private, no one had access to it. So, but that is now coming with all kinds of crazy peer-to-peer models and RPC protocols. So what I'm trying to say is, in all this, my sort of, adding all these jargons, is the innovation, or the pace of innovation is just not slowing down. Each time there is a new invention or innovation, a slow-moving organized, or let's say a slow-moving department like a data governance is not ready or shaped up to be, as I saw in your graphic, right? Being data savvy, and then start moving into becoming a data, executing on that constantly changing data. So the
Yes.
next question which is being asked here is, so what kind of a organizational cultural change needs to happen in order to make sure that we have the right people in place who can be super fast, flexible, proactive, in order to make sure that we constantly keep deriving the right value of data? Because we don't want to be on the wrong side of the coin. We do definitely want to learn more about ourselves and how we perform as a company, how my finance function is working, my marketing function is working, HR, etc. But from an ethical standpoint, and from a bias and privacy standpoint. So what do you think that needs to be done from an organizational perspective?
Yeah, I think it starts with risk, really. The risk of regulation, the risk of breach of regulations can drive the culture within an organization. It goes back to the balancing act between the speed of execution and the business needs, and the changing business needs, versus having analysis paralysis, where you end up with too much heavy internal processes that slow down the actual need. And the danger with that is people will jump ship, so to speak, and go back down the maturity curve. Know somebody who can get the data they need, do it locally at a session based, run their own scripts, Excel and so on, and get that information, because people will find that information. They will find that the data they need to answer their questions. They have jobs to do, and they will answer those if the system isn't in place. If people are going on this big long data warehouse, data lake project as well, that's going to suck in all the major systems and for all of those, they become projects in and of themselves. You need ETLs, you need ETL projects, you need that whole cycle of refreshing the lakes and the warehouses, for somebody then to dip into those sources of data as well. So at every point, like from the talk today, all of those things kick in every time. Are you slipping back down the maturity curve? Have you jumped out of your governance rules internally and externally? How do you keep track of that, and how do you monitor who's accessed which data? And that can be the challenge. So back to the culture of it is data-driven culture is fine, but you do have the tools of agile technology or agile processes that you can actually take, say, well-trusted data sets and data sources, and from that then run agile processes to sort of build out your end result, and then feed that back into maybe the sources of data, whoever is the gatekeepers of that data. So sometimes it can be that you want to fashion the end result that the business or the organization has a need.
Hang on, Maurice. We've been in the industry. I've also spent 3 decades trying to learn these things and teach enterprises. It is a damn hard job. The bigger the organization, as you and I probably, since we're sitting on the side of trying to work with customers who are large scale customers, perhaps even SMB size customers, if someone told me, Terry, here's a bag of money, I'm putting $50 million in your pocket. Can you fix it in a year? I would obviously be excited to take that money, but I think I'm not going to sign a contract and saying that I can transform your organization if the CEO says, I want you to do it in 1 year. So what we are trying to, that's what I mean when I mean, a cultural change seems like, it's kind of like an oxymoron. So we want people to do things. And I feel, in all honesty, that we are still trying to create an organization, data governance organization within the larger company. And it still feels that they're not getting the perspectives. So, okay, so if this is bias, I need to do this. If ethical frameworks need to set up, it's great that you build beautiful frameworks. How do we put that into practice? So what is stopping? And that's why I asked this cultural change, because obviously it's an underlying thing. It's internalization of these concepts inside your mind. So each day you go to work and you're going and fighting this surge of data that keeps coming to you, because your marketing department is not going to stop sending information to you. Because what they learn from TikTok and what the competitor is doing using TikTok is what they want you to do as a data management team, IT or AI team, and how to make sure that telling them that sure we want to do it, but it has to pass through these 7 filters, and that is what So what is that? Is there an example perhaps you have? We don't need to know the name of any customer.
Well, in our world where we operate at the more the agile speed to get into organizations and start with well, what are you trying to figure out here? Well, okay, let's see what sort of data you need to actually fulfill that answer. All I need to know. They asked a question, and you can break that out into the attributes that are required to answer that question. You say, well, so you're working backwards rather than trying to build this huge infrastructure, this entire system. Just answer a few, which seem like very simple questions as well. You start with where you want to get to and work backwards. And it seems trivial and obvious to say that, but sometimes we find some organizations will go through huge, maybe unnecessary or unused systems. Certainly in the past, where the warehouse was king and teams of people filling this data warehouse. And it might have been that a new system came in, a new HR system was swapped out. So now how do you trust the scripts to actually fill that? And then the warehouse itself, the filling of that warehouse became a project, whereas the business are moving at a faster pace than IT can keep up with them. So you needed to invert that model. And this is just from our experiences, where we would get into the data that exists already, probably in situ, and connect into those data sources, and then govern that in our system to say, right, we can actually prove that Terry connected in at this time, as well as the existing data access controls as well. So it's being mindful that these enterprise systems especially have their own access controls, and can you actually broker between the two and pass through authentication, single sign-on, etc. as well. So you can kind of show the business that okay, those systems exist. This is what you want answered from those systems as well. So, using our system, we have that governance baked into our technologies, because we were mindful of that right back from the day we were founded, was to build in that control mechanism, but being able to use the control systems that are already there already, and then allow the system to self-audit itself to say, right, when was the system at, how is it accessed, and you can have performance metrics within that as well. So that's more of an agile approach. In the more traditional waterfall systems, where everything is like, we're going to design this huge data lake, this huge data warehouse, we're going to build these whole projects step by step and start filling them, and then there'll be a big rollout, a big bang at the end of this rollout, and but the system may well have moved in those intervening years. And that's a huge challenge for a business. So you've spent millions, and we have seen this, where they've spent millions of euro on that part of the technologies and process, and then something changes, a regulation changes, or something happens, but sometimes the money keeps following that strategy. Whereas the agile approach that behaves itself, it's not just wild agile, it actually does apply principles of governance, and both governance and the all of the aspects we spoke about, what's required as well. You don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater just to achieve agility and speed of thought, but it is possible to kind of, I suppose, disrupt that old model. And that's where we would have come in. That's where our business is built around, that element of being mindful in organizations that require high level of regulated access to data, and work inside that very strong tent as well. So you kind of, you satisfy the end user's needs, and it stands up to audit and scrutiny as well. But you need both. You do need both. You do need that heavy iron lifting as well at some stage. So I think we were saying this is such a broad topic as well, because every organization, they have different levels of access or different levels of data within the organization, different requirements as well. So, but I think these principles work at the micro level as well as the macro level, I think. And I think from this talk today, we really want to get across that you don't have to be a massive organization to apply these principles. You need to be aware and think of these principles at every step of the way. Just and you can investigate each of those topics and take what you will. Say, oh, that's not okay. This can help us scale as well, because it's very important as you're dealing with customers as well, that you actually have either building it into your technology, you're aware of it, and it shows savviness. Again, it goes back to one of the earlier slides there, where it was about data savviness as well, and savviness to this as well. I know it's all exciting when people talk about AI and ML. Everyone expects the promises of it, but we're doing the mundane, less interesting part of it, but it needs to be done.
And I keep saying, a lot of people want to, it has to become boring, because the boring is the important part of a journey. Growth always comes with a lot of excitement, pain, disappointment, disillusionment, and everybody's familiar with that, curve of, Gartner's curve.
The trough of disillusionment.
Trough of disillusionment, and then the steady state. So, the steady state, which I always call the boring state, is a great place for any company to be in. Do you think SMEs could also be, the companies, they are young, they're agile, they're small. Can they apply this data quality improvement and
absolutely, yeah. And I think
just like
even for ourselves as well, is the move to the cloud as well. I think a lot of new startups now, they're born in the cloud. They start in the cloud. They spin off something from Amazon or whatever, and it's we're almost envious. I mean, Terry, I think we're probably, in our day, you had to get the server yourself. You had to install it in the co-location data center, and you not only the software, the data, but you were in charge of the hardware as well. So and load balancing and all that. All of that had to be part of the start, middle, and end of the whole situation. And now, it's just brilliant. It's brilliant for us as well that we can start in the cloud and start from that point of view. I was at, I think it was the NHS eDigital event in the UK a few years ago, and one of the CCIOs, as they're called, clinical CIOs, talking about the days, and they had servers in the boot of their car, and they had to go and install it in the hospital. Those days.
Absolutely.
And you had all the inherent risks in those, and you had to be an expert in installing Oracle. Yeah.
There were so many cases in UK and also in the Netherlands. So it was with a lot of risk what we did back.
and it's what needed to be done. And you talk about full stack developers these days, and when you extended that back out to the physical hardware as well, it was
They have no idea what the
so
7-layer stack.
yeah. So from that point of view, that has solved a huge headache for us IT people as well. Is now that has been looked after as well. But I think what it now is, and somebody described this to me, it was the classic onion one. Now, okay, you're now in the cloud. Now your customers are expecting that. Okay, you have to be aware of security and data breaches. So you're moving that, where you may save in one aspect of pushing it down to the customer, then saying, right, you're in charge of the hardware, the on-premise, and so on, and we're on the software side. Once you move to the cloud, they're looking to you, saying, you just manage all of that. So now you're relying on Microsoft, Azure, Google, and so on to, you're back to backing on what their standards of access control is as well. So it's so I think to answer your question is, now modern companies and startup companies that have to be aware they're being brought into this world of this data now is publicly accessible through various firewalls and walls to get into, but the breaches are different than somebody having to physically get into an on-premise situation. They still exist, and I think to one of our slides, one of the case studies gave, where you can get the data aggregated locally, but we host the end solution in the cloud. So we're that hybrid model of taking on-prem data, kind of transforming that in its own way. Then the end result then appears on an iPhone in HTML5, nicely, beautifully formatted, and with lovely charts and stuff. But sometimes it's nice to see that and go, that data actually started out somewhere in a site buried in a basement somewhere,
I know.
So it's I think definitely GDPR woke everybody up to the whole data world and data controllers, and what does that mean? So pros and cons on both sides. But
Totally.
I think, and I know what you're saying, Terry, is what about the speed of thought and the speed of change that you need to spin on a dime? And we saw with the whole COVID side of the world, where big health, big government had to twist around and start pulling data out of personal data out of people, and people had to give over that data. And we'll see, will people have to put the genie back in the bottle now to go see where did that data all dissipate to? Because GDPR didn't necessarily stop because of a pandemic, so we'll be interested to see what lessons come out of that.
There's going to be a lot of discussions. We know there are our Dutch CDC, if you will. They also experience data theft and all that stuff. So a lot of our personal data has already also been stolen, and has been sold to entities we don't know about. So I think a lot of those questions will come in the next couple of years as we proceed. So we haven't covered it all, neither at the EU level, at institutional level, and at the organizational level. Depending on one company, is extremely averse to such breaches and hacks, and they have their checks and measures in place, versus other organizations, some public and organizations as well, a little bit more vulnerable to, and pandemic definitely kind of forced a lot of organizational door opening scenarios where people were just given a big bag of money. In the Netherlands happen quite often, and then eventually we'll figure that out. I think it's not something we're going to solve in the master's program, but Maurice, obviously we are developing a master's program to have these conversations. We're going to be doing workshops and hackathons, and we'll definitely be, working together. You and I will work together as well to, build these modules, go into fine-grained sort of discussions around, for example, these 5 dimensions of AI capability, for that matter. What is the key message that you're giving to young people? Because, you and I have swam so much in the lake back and forth. We've fished enough. We've gone into sort of lakes with no fish, and sometimes overcrowded market. But we need to have more of these professionals. It just cannot be a handful of people like you and I professing to the qua. We need to make sure that a wider generation of these master's students are getting the baggage of knowing what's happening to data. I am competent. I know how the systems are built. but how can I build these governance and ethics and
Mhm.
bias and privacy preserving system that allows
Yeah.
business to go as usual while we're all navigating in
Mhm.
safe waters.
Yeah, I think that the key message is, can you trust the data you've been given? And from that, then that poses a question. They have to think about that, because
Mhm. So
both,
data curation, basically, you're saying,
yeah,
do
can
you
you
have
trust
to
that data? Because
see?
people say,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and you say, well, where did that data come from? Be inquisitive, be critical, and say, well, can I trust that data? Where did that data come from? And we know from various data of fake data, real data. It can be tricky, because at the end of the day, in this AI profession, we are building solutions, technologies. The master's program ultimately is to provide outcomes from technology, processes, and so on. And it's just to consider that trust aspect. And just on that, because the next generation of people coming through have grown up in the social media world, where they've given their personal data. We've all done it. We've given our personal data away. So that
Well, we've been
idea of maybe,
used as well, right? You and
hmm?
I as well.
Oh, everybody, yeah. And people too. And I've teenagers and stuff, and their view of data, and initially it was, I think people are becoming a bit more conscious of who they share that data with, what groups. So you could see it in social, where people now share within groups rather than broadly as well. And so I think when the first social media platforms came out, everyone kind of pretty much shared everything. So you can see a bit more pulling back on that. So it really is, and that's in a very short period of time, on how people mature. Now, people now going into their 20s and so on. What are they bringing? What attitudes are they bringing towards
Correct.
data and privacy, as they go into the business world, into academia, and so on? So it'd be very interesting to see where concepts of privacy and data are they as old as the hills, and things haven't changed. Ultimately, people are more private, but it's
We'll see. We'll
yeah,
see. We'll see if it is a selective privacy.
mm,
Privacy to me means
mm,
I don't want you to do
yeah,
anything with me, but what I do with
mm,
you and
mm,
everybody else is a
yeah,
different story.
yeah.
But that's a
But
different.
just on that point, and it was something that was put to me quite recently. Somebody said that it's different when that data is used for other things, such as advertising. But if that data that you've shared actually will affect my well-being, my income, it affects you in a material way, rather than going, so what? Somebody advertised a car to me because I was searching cars or whatever. Is that a big deal? Oh, that data
Right.
you shared now, that's actually affecting you somehow, and maybe you won't know why, or maybe it might be more obvious. Then that could be a differentiator.
Cool. Maurice, I want to thank you for this wonderful conversation. These are deep and educated conversations that we definitely, and I know that our colleagues in the academia, in the consortium, are plugging in these important parts into the modules to bring both data awareness, data savviness, even learning, all the fundamentals of building deep learning and machine learning models, to on the other sides the ethics and bias. And I am very excited to work with you and all our consortium member partners to actually make it a successful master's program for the rest of the wider community. Keep asking questions, follow Nathean Analytics. It's a wonderful company, a company that has been 20 years and still professes this, definitely knows all the scar tissue that an organization tends to bear.
Mhm.
And it's worthwhile to kind of follow them, get in touch with Maurice and his organization, yourselves. Ask us, follow us on LinkedIn. Human Centered AI Masters also has a LinkedIn page. We are revamping our website, but do go to humancenteredai-masters.eu. If you just do a search on Human Centered Masters EU, you're going to find us. We're already findable on Google, so we're doing quite well. Very excited and very thankful and
Mhm.
grateful, Maurice, to have you
Thank you,
here.
Derek.
Your insights have been
Yeah.
very useful. I have also, kind of, when I listen to you, I'll probably use that also in my conversations with my colleagues, because as much as we do and we help, I invest in startups myself. I know that a startup without a responsible jacket or a wrapper around itself
Exactly.
will not be as successful
Mhm.
as one would imagine. So thank
Mhm.
you. This has been an educating journey for me
Thank
again.
you.
A great
Yeah.
reminder. Thanks very much. Do hold on, Maurice, before
Sure.
while I end the broadcast. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
We're going to be doing this wonderful webinar regularly. We're going to be bringing a lot of top sort of scientists as well, researchers, but also software companies from wider community. Most of you guys are probably familiar with a lot of these wider labs and educational sort of initiatives as well. So keep following this page and our Human-Centered AI Master's Program. September is where we're going to start our master's program. We want you to enroll. Universities in Utrecht, in Dublin, in Hungary, BME University in Dublin, and University in Naples. When I say University Utrecht, I mean Hogeschool Utrecht, HU. Follow these institutions. Reach out to me if you want to obviously join the master's program, because that's obviously why we're here. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Stay safe. Bye-bye.